Well, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today had announced the budget, which is the Modi 3.0's first full-fledged budget, in which there was a massive tax relief for the middle class. Now, there's a political war going on that. You heard the opposition leaders, including Mr. Akhilesh Yadav, who says ki kuch nahi mila hai middle class ko. There's inflation, there's mehengai, and many in the opposition are also calling it a chunavi budget, pointing out what has been announced for Bihar. According to them, the government's focus was on Bihar entirely. Although Tejaswi's reaction was very interesting, because Tejaswi Yadav believes कि Bihar को कुछ नहीं मिला है, सौतेला व्यवहार किया गया है. Let me open this up and go across to our guests, and let's get in the industry voices first. We're joined by Tom Vadakkan, national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. We're also joined by R. Jagannathan, editorial director, Swaraj. We have Dr. Nikul Patel, leader of the Congress on the broadcast. Professor Bhuvan Bhaskar, national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, joins us. Rakesh Nangia, chairman, Nangia Anderson India Private Limited, is joining us in the studio. Rajat Chopra, economist and CEO BankersKlub. Gyanesh Chaudhary, MD Vikram Solar, is also joining us in the broadcast, along with Rajat Dhar, economist and tax expert. Let me begin with Mr. Nangia. Mr. Nangia, has the industry's expectations been met through this budget?
See, the government has catered to a lot of industry, but you say does it require intervention for every industry? It is very difficult to say that. But the government has tried to touch on the pain areas of a lot of industries. And just to give me some classical case, take the case of a startup, and a very beautiful analogy. Government said we are going to commit fund of 10,000 crores. And you won't believe it, this is the second series of it. The first series, which the investment was made a few years back, that has become 90,000 crores today. See the value of the money that will be, and see, unfortunately, it's not in the public domain. But I'm talking to startup people today, and today after my morning session, it has gone up by 9x the investment. So there's the power reforms. There's a massive power reforms. So infrastructure doesn't need too much of reforms, because infrastructure needs money. Government has contributed 12 lakhs crore for this budget. Yes, there has not been an incremental increase this year as compared to the previous years, but I think this government is clear. If the money is required for infrastructure, government is willing to spend it. Take the case of air traffic. Take the case of Uran scheme, actually. They have touched it very well. They opened so many sectors. Do you know that, I must tell you very interesting thing, every 5th day, Indigo imports one airport in the country. Every 6th day, Tata imports one aircraft in the country. India may construct one airport, close to one airport per month. Can you believe this figure? You are talking about 200 airports in 20 years. It comes to 10 in 1 year. You make 10 airports. See, they have touched the aircraft also. They have touched the airport industry. They have touched the aircraft is there. They have touched startups. They have touched it. They have touched manufacturing wherever is required also. It's not that they have not touched also. But let's accept it. Do we accept the government to touch every sector? Answer is no. But if there's a pain area, we expect the government to touch it, because there's an opportunity once a year comes openly. But budget is not gone are the days where you used to make changes in the budget. Absolutely. If the changes are required, you'll go ahead with that. You're not going to wait for the budget to come. And this model message of the government is very clear.
So all in all, will you give a thumbs up?
I will. Naturally, I'm going to give a budget and combined budget.
Okay.
See, I will not give the vertical or one specific line. When I combine personal income tax and when I combine the corporate tax, I give a thumbs up.
All right, let me bring in Gyanesh Chaudhary as well. Like Mr. Nangia said, Gyanesh Chaudhary, the government has placed significant emphasis on the reforms in the in the power sector, and has incentivized states to enhance the electricity distribution and transmission. How does VSL plan to contribute to these reforms? Mr. Chaudhary, can you hear me? Mr. Chaudhary, can you hear me, sir? Okay, I don't think he's able to hear me. Let me bring in Rajat Chopra. Rajat Chopra, I'm also going to dabble a little bit into what the politicians are saying, because, it looks like at the moment that everybody is only responding on the highlights, which is, of course, the massive tax reliefs that the middle class has got. Now, there are some politicians like Rahul Gandhi who are saying this is a band-aid on a bullet injury. Combine that with other things that are not being discussed. Do you believe that the government has treated this budget like a band-aid on a bullet injury? Rajat Chopra?
Look, I would not definitely get into a Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
now?
sir, please
can
go
you
ahead.
hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I would not comment on the political angle that the politicians are trying to draw. That is very personalized to parties and people. I think overall it was a very Viksit Bharat budget, Make in India budget, and that is the way I see it. And overall, if I see that the 85% of the class that has been benefited, the middle class have been benefited from the tax benefit, I think that's where the real benefit comes. But the clear agenda of the government definitely looks like putting this 85% to a new tax regime transition so that they get the benefit. However, the tax inflows are 80% from the rest of the 15%. That's another story to it. But if you see overall, I think the sectoral, as was mentioned earlier, the sectors have been touched upon. Tourism, medical tourism, I think all the sectors have been touched upon. But then, Swati, the key lies, if you see, the key lies in the execution of these schemes, which means execution at the ground level to the real beneficiaries. Which means the process, which means the governance, which means the time. Now, if I am getting all those schemes, I as an MSME sector, I as an MSME of India, how I am going to benefit? For example, the CGTSME scheme is for example increased to 2 crores. Now, how it is really correlating with the execution speed to the core beneficiary, that is MSME on ground, is where the key role comes. And so my thing is that government has set the platform in last 10 years for the India to be on the global stage. But I think there is a lot of scope of improvement when we see on the execution side of these schemes. I don't see personally that many of the MSME would be knowing that government runs more than 21 MSME beneficial related schemes. That includes also the marketing expense scheme to the new MSME setup. So I think there is a lot of gap in that understanding and the execution. That is where I see. But clearly from a I would say sectoral angle, I think if Bihar becomes a focus, that clearly spells some kind of political interest. But then I would not want to comment on that. But so do Delhi, so do Bombay, so do Kolkata, so do many other states. I think that clearly reflects some kind of political interest gaining. But overall, it's a Viksit Bharat kind of budget. And if you see the tariff also, I think the Finance Minister has tried to offset that in some form with various kinds of initiatives. But overall, I think it's a Viksit Bharat budget. But then we should not only applaud about the tax.
Is that it's a Viksit Bharat budget and execution is the key. Let me try and go across to Gyanesh Chaudhary again. If you can hear me, Mr. Chaudhary, we were just discussing the emphasis that the government has placed on the power sector. How does VSL plan to contribute to these reforms?
Thank you, Swati. I'm sorry about the glitch earlier. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Go ahead, please.
Great. According to me, it's a great time to be in the power sector and the energy sector. The government has given a very strong mandate on enhancing exports, manufacturing. There's 35,000 crores allocated for green hydrogen. There is a separate effort to set up export promotion. Solar itself is a very strong mandate promoted directly by Honorable Prime Minister. So we see some very bullish decisions being taken on capital allocation, as well as moving on to building a strong energy independent and Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Absolutely. Now, Rajat Dhar, the common man, was interested in knowing how much tax relief, something that the middle class was waiting for far too long. That has happened. The politicians, some of them, they may not be satisfied and very happy with it. But the common man definitely is, because no income tax till 12 lakh of income. But then if you see the breakup, which is on the screens as well, every income group seems to be saving some money at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yes, if you say that when we break down the budget and analyze it and taking into consideration the exemption of under Section 87 under the new tax regime, we see that yes, from 75,000 to 1 lakh being in the hand. But then and there are actually two different set of you can say retail investors, or you say consumers for that matter, because, or salaried people for that matter, because there are some people who are very heavy on their home loans and other such HRA consumables, whereas there are larger chunk which are not too much dependent on that. But once we run different permutation combinations, say across say for example, if a person is having a 15 lakh of income or a 20 lakh of income, vis-a-vis a person having a 12 or 10 lakhs of income, we will see that yes, there are certain cases where when we constitute all the exemptions being availed based on the loan, based on the different deductions, then we see that yes, for some there is an old tax regime which is still good, and for some there is a new tax regime. But yes, there would be convergence happening, and we will be seeing that people moving to the new tax regime. However,
will there be an automatic shift to that?
There would be eventually automatic shift to that. And slowly and steadily more and more people will switch to, because we have already known that more than 70% are already to new tax regime, and the objective of the government is to move that. And obviously, as is anticipated, the HUF will be next under the hammer in next 1 or 2 budgets that we foresee. But having said that, this is just one aspect of it. Like just before, there was a session by our Honorable Finance Minister, and she said to one of the queries that the tax is on the income. Now, whether you have an income from your earned sources or from the capital gains, it is to be taxed. Yes, it is to be taxed, but you can't have LTCG, SCGG and STT also clubbed into the taxes in between, because there are many countries where when you are already paying an STT, the LTCG or the shorter, there is not dual or multiple taxation. So then that is also a disadvantage, because this also questions our comfort in our government that they are not profiteering out of it just because the regulations have not come up. There's a multiple taxations going on there.
You know, there are direct taxes, indirect taxes. On top of everything, you're paying some cess as well, because ultimately the middle class that is strengthening the economy is also bearing the brunt of the subsidies or the freebies that are announced by the government. It all goes from the pocket ultimately of the Aam Aadmi itself. And any sort of relief, Rajat, is welcome, but it's never enough. So
one more thing, like when we're talking about the Viksit Bharat, the main irony of the fact is the government is saying that we have not, they are boosting it that we have not curtailed our capital expenditure and it is going to remain same. Now the point, let me put a simple factor. Your inflation is growing at say 4.1 or 5% or 6%. Your earlier capex expenditure has not been covered fully. You have not spent that money. And this year you're already saying, okay, we are not reducing the capital expenditure. So technically you are not growing the capital expenditure.
Right.
Your earlier one is unspent, this is not spent, and the irony is that they are saying that we are setting up AI and 5 to 10% of the educational budget will be gone to that. Educational budget increase has been just 4.1%, which is less than the inflation. So when you are not even contributing to the leverage of information or a knowledge at the AI level itself, that within the ambit of the education itself, how would you compete to China or whatsoever that Vietnam and Thailand in the competitive landscape and then increase the GDP and
I would like a comment from R. Jagannathan on that.
See, I think this is the stage where I think there's a limit to how much government can do in any sector. Okay? The government is going to cede space partly to the private sector, and one of the ways to do that is to put more money in the hands of people, which is what it has done with the middle class and the other salaried class. Right? Once the driver of spending shifts partly to individuals and the retail customers, that will create demand. We have been saying what consumption is not growing as much, people are not doing discretionary, they are not buying enough TVs or whatever it is that they normally buy. Now once you put money in the hands of people, then the investment for increasing capacity will come from the
But tell me something, now there's no tax till 12 lakhs, so you're saving some amount. Like I said, every income group is saving something. But when these things that the Aam Aadmi is going to spend on, when they become expensive, ultimately you are spending that amount that should have been like a good saving when everything else around you is becoming expensive. Perhaps that's what the opposition is trying to point out. The inflation, the Mehengai should have been the focus.
Yeah, but inflation is largely at this point food driven. The opposition says, oh yeah, but that food is benefiting your farmers. They're nothing farmers, the higher prices are going to farmers. It may be going some to middlemen, but substantial some part of it will be going to farmers, so which is good for farmers. So my point is, inflation is about 5.5% now. It's coming down, and over the next 2-3 quarters it will be at 4%, right? Which is excellent performance given the kind of supply side disruptions that have taken place after COVID, and also now that if Trump brings in more uncertainties, I think it's an excellent performance. You know, don't forget 2 years back, America had higher inflation than us. You know, so we are just catching up because all those supplies that are being brought in are coming down. So my point is this, that putting more money in the hands of people is always better than trying for the government to do the same thing. And if this marks a long-term shift where tax rates come steadily down for everybody, then I think we are seeing a fundamental shift in the way.
Purchasing power, of course, increases consumption. This will boost consumption.
Yes,
I know, Mr. Nange, you want to come in, but this is a good mix of political analysts, politicians, and the industry voices. I'll take in those voices as well. After a very short break, I'll try and come across to you as well. Government says it's a Vikasit Bharat budget. The opposition is not impressed. Let me quickly take in the views coming in from the political analysts and the politicians. We have Professor Bhuvan Bhaskar, national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party here. Industry जो voices हैं, जो corporates हैं, वो तो thumbs up दे रहे हैं, पर opposition को क्यों लग रहा है कि ये किसी काम का नहीं है या middle class को वाकई कोई राहत नहीं मिली है?
देखिए, इस बजट को जो हम देख पा रहे हैं, हमको लग रहा है ये सरकार बचाने का बजट है, क्योंकि एक ही प्रदेश पर केंद्रित ये बजट है, बिहार प्रदेश पर केंद्रित, और सबको पता है ये बैसाखी की सरकार है और कहां-कहां से चल रही है, बिहार से, आंध्र प्रदेश से, केवल फोकस अपनी सरकार को बचाने के लिए किया गया। और जो किसान, महिला और लघु उद्योग है, उनके लिए कुछ नहीं है। बहुत जिम्मेदारी से कहना चाहता हूं आपके चैनल के माध्यम से, किसानों के लिए तो ये बजट बहुत ही घाटे का सौदा है। मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं सरकार किस कृषि क्षेत्र वो है जहां पर 46% रोजगार है, जीडीपी जहां पर 18% है, लेकिन हम क्या देख पा रहे हैं, किसान के जो उपकरण है जिनसे खेती से सहायक चीजें होती हैं, वो सब सरकार महंगा करके और उनको टैक्स में आप देख, उनको कर्ज में आप सहूलियत कर रहे हैं,
तो किसी को फायदा नहीं हो रहा है।
मैं आपको बहुत जिम्मेदारी से बता, बस केवल 1 मिनट दे दीजिए मुझे। मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूं किसानों को किस दिशा में सरकार ले जाना चाहती है। ये चाहती है कि किसानी करना छोड़ दे, खेती करना छोड़ दे किसान, और जो जमीनें हैं वो बेच दे अपने औद्योगिक मित्रों को।
तो
इस दिशा पे ये सरकार
बहुत बड़ा आरोप आप लगा रहे हैं। लेकिन आई वांट टू गो अक्रॉस टू निकुल पटेल एज वेल एंड देन टॉम वडक्कन, यू कैन रिप्लाई टू बोथ। निकुल पटेल, बहुत लोग ये भी कहेंगे कि जब यूपीए की भी सरकार होती थी, इतनी सारी पार्टीज होती थी साथ में, तो हर पार्टी को उनके रीजन को, उनके स्टेट को ध्यान में रखते हुए बजट बनाया जाता था। एंड यू नो बैक देन बहुत सारे जब रेलवे मिनिस्टर अलग से बजट देते थे तो वो अपने रीजन के लिए ज्यादा ट्रेन शुरू करते थे, तो ये तो पहले भी हो चुका है। योर व्यू?
Yeah, you rightly pointed out. Railway budget was different budget. Today you cannot find a railway budget and not major allocation was found in it. Secondly, the government is claiming that we are targeting Viksit Bharat 2047. Now, when you're talking of Viksit Bharat, they have targeted agriculture as a first priority, and that is reason because they find that the Lok Sabha mandate what they got is really alarming for them. And definitely they can support their supporters who are giving support to the government. But if you see, government is identifying 100 low productivity districts. But whether they will be able to achieve that or not, that is the question. Because previously, if you see that there were 100 smart cities that were focused by the government.
You're concerned about the execution. Tom Vadakkan, but please do respond to what the Samajwadi Party spokesperson said. The government has brought in such a budget that will force the farmers to give up farming.
Well, there is much to be said about this budget, which I think the opposition parties want to see it in the red. The fact of the matter is, this is probably a dream budget. We had a briefing and discussion with the Finance Minister where she explained the nitty-gritties of this budget, the background of which it worked. India's economy is the fastest growing economy among the major global economies. The transformation work during the government's first 2 terms serves as a guiding light, enabling this government to move forward with determination.
All right.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span across sectors focusing on Garib Yuva, Annadata, Nari, that is poor youth, farmers and women. What are they talking about? This is a broad canvas. This is not, each of the state has been invested through the departments. So the funds that will go to the department will be allocated to the state.
All right.
Now, on a broader perspective, what is happening in the power sector is going to be, I think, one of the biggest game changer. The nuclear factor is coming in, and you have smaller nuclear power stations to be established, which will mean that power will be generated clean and neat. For this, there will be an amendment in the Atomic Energy rules and regulations. And that is a game changer. Now, these are things that the opposition doesn't see.
Opposition does not want to see it. Let me also invite Ganesh Chaudhary for a quick reaction on what Mr. Tom Vadakan just said, specifically talking about the power sector. Please, if you could place your views on the panel about the export promotion mission of the government as well.
Thank you, Swati. I want to talk about one fact that any developed or developing nation, the amount of energy consumed per capita is a very big indicator of how developed we are or where we are headed. India is growing. India is still sitting at the third quadrant of the per capita energy consumption, and this needs to go up. Today's budget talks a little bit about that, takes us through the big changes that it's doing with respect to promoting manufacturing and thus creating an export powerhouse as far as India is concerned. Looking at where China is globally today, we keep comparing India with China, but to give the industries a safe place to grow, deploy large capital and give competition globally. I think that is what this budget is providing, providing duty exemptions for imports as well as other export incentives. This is going to be a game changer for industry.
It's going to be a game changer. I don't have much time left. I have to wrap up. But Mr. Nangia, earlier you were saying something about the tax relief and how this has been the first time that people, yes.
First of all, we need to be clear that the maximum saving which is there is 1,10,000 if your income is 25 lakhs. In the old regime, you were paying 4.4 lakhs rupees. In the new regime, you are paying 3.30. A very big change. This relief, I was saying, since independence, I don't recall any time when the government has given such a massive exemption. Let me add here. If you get a relief of 10,000, 15,000, we used to rejoice that government has exemption did diya. Now you are talking about 1,10,000, never. And see the boost it will bring on production, on consumption.
This has not happened since independence, you're saying. So that's a massive relief for the taxpayers, for the middle class. Government says this is Viksit Bharat budget. The opposition says nothing but a Chunavi budget. I have to wrap up the debate on that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.